So this is a run that I had GPT 5.6 Soul on high thinking, try to play of Balatro on gold stake, and the results were kind of surprising. So I'm not controlling any of this. The gameplay is done entirely by GPT, and it's controlling my computer, and this video is sped up by 3 times because it takes about a million years to make any particular decision. Starting off in the small blind, it actually skips for a charm tag, which is a really strange decision. In general, skipping is a terrible idea on gold stake, and it's even more terrible to do what GPT does next, which is to skip the big blind for a foil tag. So just for a foil joker, it decides that it wants to skip the odds of finding anything good in the entire shop. These are both terrible decisions. As you're going to see, its decision making is not especially strong in the game. In the first Arcana pack, it doesn't even select 2 cards to use the Empress on. It's not especially good at using the mouse and controlling which ones it's going to click. You can see right here, even though it drew that mult card, it didn't try to use it to beat the blind in fewer hands. So there's a lot of very obvious things that it could do to play better that it just doesn't. Actually, I later went and played the seed myself, and if you play the first ante properly, you get some really strong jokers, and it becomes a lot easier. It's a pretty comfortably easy seed to win on gold stake. But the foil tag kind of pays off. When I saw this, I said, you know what, a rental odd Todd that's foil is pretty worthwhile, especially if you have more than $10. It seems like a fine choice. I felt bad that it was somewhat rewarded for the foil skip by getting a not terrible tag, but here it makes a really inexcusable decision, and GPT buys the clearance sale when it has $10 and absolutely no source of money, and it's getting this rental fee each round. Just a crazy, crazy decision, and yet you see it skips again. This one, honestly, not a bad skip. If you're in that position, having made a bunch of terrible decisions, you maybe should take the top-up tag, get 2 clean common jokers, and what it gets is actually pretty good. As you'll see, I think this may end up being worse for GPT than getting a different joker, because it gets the droll joker and decides the rest of the match it's just going to play flushes. Has no strategy other than to play flushes. Even though most gold stake players know that really you should be trying to spam pairs, even if you have odd Todd, maybe especially if you have odd Todd. Odd pairs are just so strong. And maybe you play flushes early on just to survive, but as you'll see, GPT just plays flushes indefinitely and cannot end up scoring enough to beat the scaling blinds. The egg is also the only economy joker that it has access to, the only hope it has of getting out of debt, and when I was watching this happen, I was honestly kind of optimistic it might be able to do that, but it doesn't end up being able to. Here it takes the sun over the magician, the lucky cards that could give it more of an economy, and even scoring, just because it's got a droll joker, it thinks it must be doing flushes. It makes the cardinal mistake of every Balatro chatter. It thinks that synergy is more important than efficacy. And so it makes this pretty bad decision and is not in a good position. It still has only $2. It's got no chance of building up an economy. And the decision making isn't going to improve from here. So I'll let this play out and maybe take this opportunity to describe a little bit more about this setup. So if you've never used an AI model on your computer, this might be a little confusing, but ChatGPT is not just a model that you can access on the website ChatGPT, but is instead also a agent that you can control on your computer that can control your computer for you. That is in the Codex app. And GPT 5.6 is their latest model, and that's what I wanted to test. And it's capable of computer use. You can see it's actually manipulating what's on screen correctly, as in every decision it makes is basically the decision that it intended to make. This wasn't really true even just a few months ago. Often they would get pretty stuck and unable to even remember what they were doing or pay any attention to keeping a plan together. At the very least, even though GPT is not making especially good decisions, we can step back and realize this is a little bit crazy. This wasn't really on the table 6 months ago. Things are moving really fast, and so there's at least something going on here. As you can see, it's still very committed to the flush game plan, takes the Jupiter card. Even taking Celestial packs as a whole is just such a terrible idea when you have no economy and a rental fee that's dragging your economy down. And yet it still just has no respect for building that up. Takes the Hierophant. Chips aren't even an especially important thing to be scoring right now with the foil Todd. But, tell that to the machine. For the first time ever, this really surprised me, GPT doesn't skip a small blind. It really insists, when you look at its reasoning, it insists that skipping the small blind is usually a good idea because you don't get any reward money for the small blind. This is an at least understandable noob trap. It's not crazy to think, well, because you don't get any money, maybe you could skip. It's probably wrong anyway, and you can maybe see shops. It's not even like seeing shops is especially valuable right now because there's no money to buy anything in the shops with. But it's at least the only chance you have of finding something that could be useful for scaling to beat the blinds. As you can see, none of these jokers are scaling jokers. They're just, temporary scoring. And here it makes the decision to sell the egg and buy the foil business card. This is an interesting decision. I think that buying the business card is a good decision. Probably I would sell the Todd and the Juggler. Actually, I'm not certain you could afford it with that. Actually, you definitely couldn't. So maybe you do have to take or sell the egg in order to get the business card, which is kind of sad. I mean, maybe you don't do it. Maybe you wait for something better. It's a sad position to be in overall, but this was an intriguing decision, and I wish I could really see how deeply it considered the trade-offs of selling the guaranteed econ joker for the foil business card, which is more random. And when you're playing flushes, you can't really guarantee playing many face cards. As you'll see, it doesn't end up playing very, very many face cards. And here the judgment gives an out. It says you have an opportunity to stop this miserable flushes game plan and just switch to playing pairs. And yet it does not want to do that. GPT is insistent that it is only about flushes, and it sells the half joker, a truly horrendous decision when this has no benefit. It's not even like you're buying another joker to replace it. You just sell it for no reason whatsoever. I mean, the first time it sold a joker for clearly not any purpose at all, and just a sign that it hasn't really figured out this game. Yeah, I don't really know how much more there is to say about this gameplay. You can see it keeps changing things into hearts because it keeps wanting to play flushes. I wasn't really certain if there was a strategy behind which cards it was choosing to convert. LLMs are pretty good at making strategy on this dimension, as in considering more things than a human might, because it's not especially difficult for them to make micro optimizations like that. It's not difficult for them to calculate, okay, which of these scores more. They have the ability to call tools to make those calculations, whereas for us it might be kind of difficult to make those calculations. So I kind of expected that there would at least be these micro optimizations, even if the macro decision making wasn't always accurate. But as you can see, they're just kind of a little bit random. Okay, it takes, 3 cards that aren't hearts and turns them into hearts. Does it choose which ones? Is it trying to make a secondary suit? Is it trying to maximize the chance of a flush? It wouldn't be doing that because it didn't convert all of them from one suit into hearts. So lots to be desired in its handling of the situation. Here there's another opportunity to get an econ joker. Frankly, in this position, if you're playing, you should really just not take anything. Just keep playing, keep trying to play face cards. Use that to build up your economy. It doesn't seem like GPT realized that the foil business card was also valuable for actually making money. It seems like it's really focusing only on the potential to use it for the plus 50 chips, even though chips are already covered. But as you can see in the previous round, it wasn't really trying to play face cards at all. And it's not playing two pairs or three of a kinds or anything that involves a lot of face cards. Although, intriguingly, it does take a Uranus in that Celestial pack. Again, it would be really nice to get a good view into the internal thinking of the model. Was the reason that it took a Uranus there because it could play two pairs of face cards more easily than other hands with face cards? That would be quite surprising. Honestly, a big update for how much I think this is a sophisticated play of the game. But unfortunately, not very easy to tell. Here it has a four of a kind that's odd. Unfortunately, it doesn't even score any particular mult, so not even necessarily the right move to play it. But, it doesn't tend to use its discards very well either. Not much digging for valuable cards, which previously there weren't any, but now with this business card, anything that's a face card is just more valuable. But nonetheless, we don't see any attempt to dig for the face cards. I imagine that part of the trouble for a model playing this game is that every action is just taxing in terms of how much it has to pay attention to and remember about the game. And so the more actions that are like discards, where it has to keep reassessing what the state of the deck is and what it's looking for, I imagine the less well it's going to do. But finally, we have one more mult joker that's not Joel Joker. Again, this could be used to support a shift into not necessarily pairs, but maybe two pairs. If you could have multiple hard cards in there. It's kind of just an enabler of a bad decision, Maybe if it wasn't for this lusty Joker, GPT would forget about its flush obsession and instead start playing better hands. But also maybe it would just lose. Finally, it uses the Hangman. I'm a little bit interested in this decision to use the Hangman here rather than before. Intuitively, it made sense because previously there was mostly valuable cards in hand. But if I was playing that as a human, I would probably discard the other cards to find cards that I really did want to get rid of. But it doesn't do that. It just looks at the hand in front of it and says, well, do I want to discard any of these cards? Or do I want to get rid of any of these cards? And if the answer is no, it seems to just decide, well, to hell with this whole thing. And so that's why it uses the Hangman in this round. I'm intrigued by this wheel. Like, why doesn't it choose to use the wheel? What would make it decide to? It's clearly considering what to do and decides that it's got to be hearts. I don't know about the math. It's possible that the heart flush actually was the best to discard for, even though there were more spades in hand. I don't recall at this point how many spades had been converted. But as you can see, it's still chucking along. Still getting just enough to clear the blinds. Still no scaling in sight. So, is anything going to change about this setup? Is it going to just sleepwalk into disaster? Oh, and one thing I didn't even notice until rewatching is that it actually takes a D6 tag skip. So the skip that gives rerolls from $0 onwards. This is really interesting to me because it hasn't rerolled a single time before this. Oh, and it spins the wheel and hits a foil. It's all coming up foil for this model. So it takes the D6 tag. Obsession with skipping continues. I've had the models play a few different games. This is just the one that I recorded. They're really obsessed with skipping. I don't really understand why. It's in some ways really mirroring the bad habits of a new player. It's obsessed with playing flushes. It doesn't look for scaling. It thinks that skips are better than they actually are. It's almost a very human type of failure to play Balatro. And now it's faced with a Celestial pack where it can't choose flushes and it doesn't really know what to do. Makes some choices really shouldn't even be opening an expensive Celestial pack on only $10, but just another new player mistake. It does not value money at all. It does not value staying at the interest cap. Frankly, I'd honestly expect that just some basic principles kept as a reminder would substantially improve its play. Saying something like prioritize money, try to reach the interest cap before spending extensively, go for pairs, prioritize spammable hands, try to get seals. There are so many different pieces of advice you could give a beginner to improve their play at Balatro, and I'm not certain, but I think that it might even help the AI play better. And if I remember right, it actually tries to reroll at this point. It spends $1 on a reroll. Or am I remembering that wrong? We wait in suspense. No, it really values the Arcana pack. It just doesn't care about the rerolls. Even the rerolls that it spent a valuable skip tag on, gets the free rerolls, decides it doesn't want to do anything with them. So just incoherent decision making from the model here. And once again, it sees a sun, it wants to take a sun. It doesn't look at, say, the chariot, which is maybe the only chance that we've seen so far to score more. Just no interest in scoring anything. Not really paying attention to the blind requirements and how they're scaling. But, it's going to pay the price for that soon. You can see how long is left in the video. It's not a very in-depth strategy being pursued here. Maybe slightly prolonged by the foil juggler, but nonetheless it's going to end soon. Here, if I was playing, I would definitely just play the straight to get business card value, but GPT doesn't care. It just wants to get rid of everything that is not a heart and just wants to play its hearts. Knowing, of course, that anything that's not a flush is not going to score, especially anything that's not a heart flush. And so maybe actually it's a genius, and playing that spade or playing that straight would cause it to lose, but it's clearly not playing any better than I would. And you can see it's chugging along. It's not so low that the model is feeling the warning signs. One other micro optimization that's nice to see there is that it does actually play the odd cards. It recognizes that odd Todd requires the odd cards, and so it's able to keep that in its mind while making the decision about what hand to play, even though it's clearly failing at a bunch of other individual optimizations, for example, playing the face cards with the business card. And as you might expect, there's not going to be any saving of money in this run. Every shop, it just myopically tries to figure out what to do. Does it ever open a standard pack in this run? I'm not certain it does. Perhaps that's another noob trap it falls into, is devaluing standard packs. But I guess we'll see what it does with its limited time left. Oh, it rerolls. That's really surprising because it's the first time it has tried to do any rerolling in the entire match. Maybe it realizes that it's not scaling. It knows that it has to get something. And honestly, even though it's played terribly this whole time, I kind of respect that. And it ends up with the hologram. I remember now when I played this seat afterwards, a hologram is one of the jokers that I took and ended up winning with. Because of course you can, why not? You just take it, you grab every standard pack, and you win. And of course you can't really do that if you're playing flushes, because you have to, well, I guess you can take hologram with flushes, but it's so much more compatible. It was so much more compatible with my pair game plan, and it's not even available to the model. It can't buy, because it doesn't have $5 to buy hologram. But as you can see, we're not going to have many rounds left. It skips once more. I don't even understand the reasoning for this. Probably it just hates all small blinds because small blinds don't have reward money. And it's not going to survive this round. You will see it dies because it has no plan to beat the scoring limit and doesn't really take extra time to think about the pros and cons of skipping. But, it's going to enter the depth throws. It's going to fail to score. And then we can do a postmortem. So I tried to evaluate whether this was just a particularly difficult seed by playing it back myself, and it was quite easy to win. I ended up with a red card hologram uh, build. Actually, in the first ante, there's a Ghost Michelle that carries you through the early game pretty easily while you assemble your economy build. And there's nothing especially difficult about playing this. And so I give it even less credit for its performance because it failed on a fairly easy gold stake seed. You have access to Odd Todd and Gross Michelle early. These are really powerful jokers, and then you get scaling jokers like Red Card later on, and then ending up with Hologram, Cavendish. I believe there was also an Obelisk that was pretty convenient to scale. And so it's a pretty good video to show the noob traps that are present in Gold Stake. Frankly, if this was done by a human playing the game, I wouldn't be too surprised. And it's also worth saying that I tested the model on a white stake run that I didn't end up recording, but it actually won that. So it was able to play the basic white stake gameplay and make decisions that were pretty reasonable, rarely ambitious decisions. It didn't need to, pursue scaling jokers, for example. And in that particular seed, it got access to an early green joker on Ghost deck. So with the hex, it was able to go through the entire game pretty easily. And in contrast, if it didn't get such an easy scaling start handed to it, you can see from this game that it probably wouldn't try to find one by building up an economy. So this is the end. It does not survive this. Its last remaining flush is unable to do anything. It realizes this. It's sitting there, not yet picking. Perhaps it's afraid to lose. Who knows? And so that's it. This is going to be the end. And this is how I made ChatGPT play Balatro. And it honestly wasn't that bad. Like, it was really bad, but who among us isn't? Anyways, that's it. Take care.